Welcome to the GHMC election special from HyBiz News. Let's today look at the Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation's budget. Any urban agglomeration needs money to run its services. Of course, then it needs to invest money into its infrastructure, pay salaries, pay interest, and of course, do a lot of other activities. So let's now look at what comes in and what goes out at GHMC. A lot has been spoken about the 67,000 crore that the Telangana government claims it has spent in developing the infrastructure of the twin cities of Hyderabad and Secunderabad, falling under the GHMC limits. But as the numbers indicate, that's not the entire story. I had a look at the GHMC website and it shows that the tax revenues in 2019-20 were at 3,210 crores and the revenue expenditure at 2,808 crore for financial year 2019-20. Capital income is at 8,730 crores. Let's go back into a bit of history now. In the 1950s, the Municipal Corporation of Hyderabad, as it was known then, had a budget of around 15 crore, which grew to about 400 crore in a decade. The growth continued and it touched a 2,000 crore mark when it was made into a GHMC from MCH in 2007. Now that figure stands a tad close at 5,500 crores. The Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation's draft budget of 5,380 crore for the 2021 financial year has been moved upwards into 5,500 crores, a bit more. Income through property tax is projected at 1,850 crore, which is far too low when compared to the actual number of SSCs. The large number of people in the twin cities even now don't pay the property taxes despite various offers from the government including interest waiver and even discounts. There is also a huge skew from areas which generate huge property taxes like the West Zone for example, where a major part of the expenditure actually happens in the South Zone, where tax collections are the lowest. So any logic in terms of collection on one side which is higher should be spent in that area, but it doesn't always work in a democracy. But the overall budget including the estimates of GHMC funds and those for the major projects of other corporations such as Housing Corporation and Hyderabad Road Development Corporation Limited assigned to GHMC is 6,973.64 crore. In the GHMC budget of rupees 5,380 crore, let's look at the breakup. 2,630 crore is meant for the capital expenditure and 2,750 is earmarked under the revenue expenditure. The municipal corporation, that is the Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, is expecting an additional sanction amount of 350 crore under the 14th Financial Commission grants, which is why now you see a final figure of 5,500 crores. Now the GHMC has placed annual budget proposal for the next year because we are almost at the end of November, and as per the rules it has to go to the standing committee which will then look at the budgets and approve it. So we are now talking of 5,600 crore, which is 100 crore more than what this particular year is expected to end at, that is the financial year 2021. So in 2021-22 it is 5,600 crore. Now the standing committee has to decide whether that budget can go ahead. About 22% of the budget, which is about 1,224 crore, will be mobilized through loans and 1,022 crore is expected to come under user charges and other fees. GHMC also expects about 770 crore through various grants that are supposed to come from governments. The GHMC panel expects that it would get about 190 crore from fees collected from people for regularizing their properties. Now that is a big if. Nearly 25% of GHMC's budget would also be spent on development of roads and footpaths. That's a basic stuff, isn't it? It allocates about 560 crore for green budget. The civic body had recently passed a resolution making it mandatory to spend at least 10% of its budget for various greenery initiatives. We can see some of them in the twin cities, though it's still a concrete jungle out there. Now with an eye on the Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation elections a few months ago, the state government had earmarked about 10,000 crore for the development of Hyderabad urban agglomeration area in the budget of 2020 and 2021 financial year. How much of that money is actually come in, how much would be spent remains to be seen at the end of the financial year. Though it's a great subject to speak during elections. In the past, funds were allocated for specific projects in Hyderabad as a part of the Municipal Administration Department's budget. It is for the first time that the metropolis gets its fund under a separate head, which is this 10,000 crore which you are speaking of. Apart from Hyderabad, 141 municipalities and municipal corporations across Telangana have been allocated about 14,809 crore. That's a separate budget for the other corporations. The GHMC has allocated 1,593 crores, 0.64 crore for the construction of double bedroom house and roads in its city limits. But the double bedroom house is the subject of big political debate during this GHMC elections, because nobody knows what the actual numbers are. The government says one, the opposition is accusing them of something else. It is also estimated that around 50,000 crore would be required for modernizing the stormwater drains, roads and junction improvement and rehauling the drinking water and sewer network, many of it which dates back to the Nizam's days. The sewer network is still working, but one good rain and we can see what happens to Hyderabad. Chief Minister K. Chandrasekhar Rao had announced actually that the government would now focus on improving the urban infrastructure in the second term. So he's 1 year, 1.5 years into the second term, he is now talking of this 10,000 crore, which would be a part of the 50,000 crore that is spent on various infrastructure and other development work in the next 4 years. So by the time he completes his term, for the second term, he wants to come up with a report card and say, I spent 50,000 crores. However, the government did not explain how it would raise these funds. That's very important. The intent is there, but do you have the money to put where the mouth is? That's a question. Whether it would be through own resources or mobilized through financial institutions. The state has already borrowed a lot, and it would now perhaps be reaching that limit when it comes to borrowing this 50,000 crores in 4 years. Well, I suspect what would happen is they would divide this 50,000 into 12,000 every year and come up to that figure of 50,000. Now they will fall short by about 10,000 crores. According to officials, GHMC has sought about 2,300 crore for completion of flyovers and underpasses under the strategic road development plan. Now, if you go back, 17 flyovers are under various stages of construction right now, and I think if my memory serves me right, 1,870 crores, around that amount is actually due to be spent on these 17 flyovers and underpasses. These are all a part of the strategic road development plan, and the 2 BHK houses come as a separate one. The Hyderabad Metropolitan Water Supply and Sewerage Board, or what is prominently called as HMWSSB, has sought 2,175 crores for completing the drinking water supply network along the outer ring road, which is expected to see a kind of growth in the coming years. Also, the reservoirs within the ORR, they want that to be incorporated, because we saw good amount of rain this year, so they want the reservoirs now to be activated again. So Metro Water wants some money for that. Apart from the GHMC budget, there are separate budgets for major projects of the corporation assigned to GHMC, like the Telangana Housing Corporation for construction of the 2 BHK houses, and the Hyderabad Road Development Corporation, as I spoke to you earlier, for laying roads in Hyderabad. And they actually have got about 1,593 crores as we spoke. But all this pales into oblivion when one looks at the pathetic quality of infrastructure that the citizens of the Twin Cities have to put up with year after year. This is what makes the GHMC elections very interesting, because they're a corporation that functions with just 5,500 crores to run a city of the scale of Hyderabad, which has a population close to 1 crore. It needs a huge fillip. The budget has to be double or even minimum triple of that. But the government comes in and gives funds from outside, expecting the corporation to survive that way. It doesn't. Second, the property taxes have to be collected from everybody. You can't take rob Peter and then pay Paul. It doesn't work that way. It has to be paid by everybody. And in India, as we see, people don't pay income tax. There are about 200, 3, 4% people pay income tax and 96% don't pay it. Something similar is happening here. So we need to ensure that our tax collection system is perfect. For example, the leases of many of GHMC's properties are kind of in archaic mode. The amounts have not been increased year after year, despite the government's prodding, despite many of the PILs that went to the court. Those properties need to be charged the proper rentals, which is actually due as of now. You can't have a rental set 50 years before and still going on. No. So every GHMC property has to realize its value. Third, GHMC says they will regularize properties and get some money from that. That's piddly amount of money. We need to look at ways to actually auction the land if the land is under encroachment, because that's the best way to do it. And we saw that happening during the time of Chandrababu Naidu, continued through Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy's time, and now of course in the first part of TRS we did see that. But there's a huge subject of debate. We'll get into that another day. But the end of this all is the fact that GHMC needs money. But more importantly, if you look at the budget and you look at the expenditure, GHMC spends what it gets, and that not on development, on paying salaries, paying interest and doing other things. Development, as like rest of India, doesn't happen with that money that the corporation gets. It's time for a rethink, because this is not the way we can work with the GHMC budgets. There needs to be a total revamp of the entire infrastructure and other factors. Thank you for watching.